G'day and welcome to the Choosing Your Uni National Virtual Expo. My name is Rob Malicki. I'm coming to you today from Garrigal Land in Sydney, and I pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land on which I live and work. And today's session is for those students overseas, international students who are thinking of coming and studying in magnificent Australia. And I'm joined by Ian Aird, who is the CEO of English Australia. And what we're talking about is studying English in Australia, whether that's as a preparation for doing a degree or a vocational education program here, or whether that's just coming down to spend some time in Australia to explore this country and to improve your English while you're doing it. Ian's got some really good actionable tips that are going to help you choose your English language program and to understand the general English teaching environment here in Australia. So we're going to go and jump on the couch. Actually, just in just a moment, if you have any questions about this, about studying English in Australia or coming to Australia as an international student, you can jump in the Choosing Your Uni Discord. The details are down in the session description below. And of course, if you have any questions as we're going, make sure you add them in the chat if you're joining us live, and we will try to get to them at the end of this session. Anything we don't get to as part of this session, we'll be answering in the Choosing Your Uni Discord. Let's jump on the couch and have a chat with Ian Aird from English Australia. Let's go. Ian Aird, welcome to the National Virtual Expo. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Rob. It's great to see you.
Oh, actually, before we kick off, mate, maybe do you want to just a quick couple of words about your background and your role?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of English Australia, which is the national peak body, the industry body for the English language teaching sector, which in Australia we call ELICOS. I have been in this fantastic sector for about 30 years. I started as an English language teacher, traveling the world, and find myself here all this time later on.
This is really exciting for me because, of course, coming to Australia, whether it's to go to university or vocational ed and you need a little bit of top-up English to get you ready for that course, or whether it's literally just coming here to do some sort of shorter-term experience to learn some English, it's an amazing place to come and do that. So thank you for joining me to share some insights on how we make that happen. So I might just pass over to you and off we go.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, look, as you say, it's a fantastic place to come and study English. It's a fantastic place to come, full stop. But if you want to study English, Australia is a great choice. And there's a few reasons why, and I'll work through a bit of a presentation on why Australia and how to choose a college and how to get the most out of it. So starting off with studying English in Australia and why you would choose to study English in Australia. The first thing is that you're going to be in an English-speaking country, and so you're going to be surrounded by English every day. Anyone who's tried to learn a language in their own country, where they're going home at the end of every lesson, or even just stepping outside the lesson and switching straight back into your own language knows that it takes a really long time to learn the language in a way that you can actually communicate. So being surrounded by English is absolutely vital for making good progress. Second thing I'd say about studying English in Australia is that we are world renowned for the high quality of the English courses that you'll come to and enjoy here. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but it's certainly top of my list of why you would choose Australia. A big part of that is the teachers. The teachers, to be an English language teacher in Australia, you've got to be qualified, and the qualifications are pretty tough, and a fantastic teaching technique and skills course. So you know that the teachers are going to be able to help you really effectively. They're not just going to be standing at the front making you do drills. You're going to have a fantastic time, and you're going to learn really effectively. A part of this thing that we have in Australia is a really strong teaching culture. Teachers really value their professionalism and work really hard to be the best teacher they can be. English Australia is a big part of that, and there's a really active professional development scene in Australia for English language teachers. The other thing in Australia that you'll find that is different to many places in the world is that the courses are really comprehensive. So if you're studying English to travel and have fun and learn a bit of communication, that's fine. You can do that in lots of places. You can do it really well in Australia, as I say. But if you're studying because you want to go on to university or you want to do a vocational course, the courses in English in Australia, you'll find, are very comprehensive. They will cover not just learning new language and learning new grammar, and not just good reading skills and writing skills, but how to use English in a tutorial, how to listen to a lecture and take notes, how to do research in English, how to write essays in a way that is standard in Australia. And you will find that that's really valuable information, because the academic culture in Australia is going to be different from where you're from. Even if you're from many English-speaking countries, the academic culture in Australia is quite different. And we'll talk more about that in a second too. Now, the next thing I'd say is that we have really strong regulations in Australia, which means really strong protections for students. There's protection for students as consumers. There's protection for the money that you spend on your courses. And at English Australia colleges, it doesn't even matter what visa you're on. There's protection for your investment in your study as well. The other thing is that there's external mechanisms. If you're not happy with the way a problem is being solved, there's lots of external government organizations that will help you and make sure that you're getting looked after. In that respect, Australia is fantastic, and a lot of parents are very happy about sending their kids to Australia because it's so safe. Australian cities are some of the most safe cities in the world. And most Australian cities, I believe, are in the top 10 safe cities in the world. I believe Melbourne was recently ranked number 2, and Sydney's been up there as well. So these are big cities, but they're very, very safe cities, easy to get around, and safe, easy places to study and live. As for living, the quality of life is fantastic. Great weather, clean cities, and absolutely tons to do. Lots of it is free, like going to the beach, going for a walk, walking along the coast. It's even where it's not free, it's pretty cheap to catch a train to see some amazing sights around the city that you're in, and around the country. Another great advantage of studying in Australia is that you can work while you study, including while you're studying English. So if you need some extra money to keep living a fun, exciting life, you can work while you're here. Now, how do you choose a college to go to? Well, the first thing I'll say is choosing an English Australia college is a great way to make sure you're choosing one of the best colleges in Australia. So English Australia for the last 40 plus years has been making sure that its members are the best colleges in the country. They're colleges that are really committed to high quality, to high levels of professionalism. They do an awful lot to become an English Australia member. And then when they're a part of English Australia, they're a part of a community of professionalism. And they do work very hard to make sure that their quality levels are really, really high. The next thing I'd say is when you're choosing a college, work back from your principal course. So if you're going to come to Australia to study a university degree, start with the university degree and then work out which English college is going to work best for that degree. Often the universities will have their own English language college, and it's a great idea to study with the university. You're going to be on campus, you're going to be getting used to the culture of that institution and the whole location of where you're living, depending on where that university or the college is. If they don't, then they'll generally have a college who's a partner to the vocational college or the higher ed college that you're going to go to. So again, asking them or looking on their promotional material, or your agent can help you if you have an agent, to make sure that the college that you go to is connected to that pathway course. Next, you want to think about the location and the lifestyle you want. Every city in Australia is quite different. Sydney is very different to Melbourne, which is very different to Perth and Adelaide and Hobart and Brisbane, and I've got to name them all else I'll get in trouble. But we're all quite different sizes, different weather, different lifestyle. So you want to choose one that matches you, whether you're comfortable in a big city or you prefer a small town, because we do have English language colleges in along the East Coast in particular, well out of the city, in a really relaxed environment next to the beach and so on. The last thing I'd say is reach out to the college. There's nothing like getting in touch with the college to, one, get the answers straight from the college, but two, to find out who you're going to be studying with. The way they answer the question will tell you a lot about, how they work, and what it's going to be like to study with them. So do reach out to colleges. They love to hear from prospective students, and they'll be able to help you a lot. Now, as I said, look for the English Australia logo on the website of the college. That'll give you a really good starting place of what is a great college. The next thing I'd say is to prepare and to know what to expect. You're going to find that studying English in Australia is almost definitely really different to studying English in your experience. You've probably studied English in school, maybe even in classes after school, but studying English in Australia, I think you'll find, is really quite different. Expect to be engaging with your classmates a lot. Lots of talking in classrooms, lots of activities where you're working together. This is a great way to practice those communication skills, but you are going to be doing a lot of activities and a lot of speaking in class. The other thing is that Australia is a really informal place. We're an informal culture, and our classrooms are quite informal and relaxed too. It might be quite unusual for you, but most people in Australia will refer to their teacher by their first name once they're out of high school. When you're in school, it tends to be the family name. But outside of high school, even at university, some university lecturers much prefer if you speak to them and you use their first name. So we're quite informal in that way. So that's a few things to expect. And that teachers love talking to students. And they love students talking to them. They don't expect to walk into the classroom and not actually interact with you. They're really keen to have a conversation with you. So do feel comfortable to talk to your teachers when you're in Australia. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is, how do you get the most out of studying in Australia? I think the classic phrase is, you get out what you put in. So the more effort you put into your learning, the more you're going to get out from it. Now, that's a really important thing to start with, but I'd add that your teachers are the experts in learning and will give you a lot of feedback on how you can learn better. Do listen to that feedback and try and act on it. The next thing I'd say is, learn to communicate. Language is for communication. It's not just an academic exercise. So when you're learning, it's not about how many words you know. It's not about how complicated the sentences are that you can make. It's about how well you can communicate. So always trying to think about how you're going to use language to communicate. The last thing I'll say is, have fun. Make sure you're having fun in the classroom. Make sure you're having fun outside the classroom. It's outside the classroom where most of your hours will be spent. Even if you're studying really hard, you might do 20 hours a week. There's a lot more hours a week when you're awake, and you could be practicing. So get lots of practice outside of classroom by, talking to classmates, getting out and meeting people, and doing what you can to make the most of your time in Australia.
Ian, thank you so much. Some incredibly good advice there, and just to pull out a couple of points that I'd really re-emphasise. The first, around the protections for students. Australia leads the world when it comes to protections for students, and so not only from the government level, but as you were saying, like the idea of being able to look for that English Australia logo, and knowing that that means that institution has reached a level of quality is a great reassurance, I think, for students.
Absolutely.
So I think that's
Absolutely.
critical. I've got a couple of questions for you. In fact, some of these came in from our survey that we did before the virtual expo, and then I've just thought of a few as we've been going. How would a student apply to do English? Is that through a university? If they're going on to university, is it directly with an individual college? How would that work?
So I would say, as I said, you want to start with your ultimate goal and then work backwards. So if your ultimate goal is a degree from a particular university, then go to that university and say, right, well, I need to get my English language level up from here to here so that I can do that degree. Where should I study English? If the university has its own English language college, then generally that's the best place to get the English for that university. The university will work, the English language department at the university will work with the department that you're going to. They'll have designed lessons and assessments so that it's integrated into that course. Same with vocational study. But if you're coming just for English, or if the institution that you're going to doesn't have its own ELICOS department, its own English language teaching department, you might be able to just choose from a list. English Australia, on its website, you can find our members, and you'll be able to scan through all of those colleges there. You can just do the good old Google and look for colleges. I would always recommend looking for the English Australia logo, checking with the college to make sure that they are, so that you know that you're getting a safe bet with that college, and then reaching out to either the college directly or through that degree course provider, whether it's a university or a private higher education provider, or the vocational college, and getting them to help you. lots of students use agents, and those agents are expert in how to do the whole enrollment process. So that's another option. But colleges are always very happy to hear directly from students. They'll have application forms on their website, and you can even just email them and say, hey, I want to apply to come to the college. How do I do that? And they'll guide you through the process.
Ian, during a presentation, you were saying language is fundamentally about communication. So a student that's going on, for example, to do a master's degree here or a bachelor's degree, they may already have the right mark, like an IELTS level or a TOEFL level or otherwise. But what do you think about the idea of even doing a couple of weeks of preparatory English when you first arrive in Australia? Because I just know that with the
Mm,
accent and when you arrive in a new place, the usage of language is different to what you might be familiar with, even if you've got quite a
absolutely.
good level. What do you think about
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would suggest, in fact, even further, that we've actually got research to show that students who come in with the same level of English, where they've got the level of English required to enter their course, those who have developed English through an English language college in Australia perform better in their degree programs. So they're getting better grades. They're having a better time because it's not just about your English. It's about being comfortable using your English in a classroom setting. It's about having those classroom lecture tutorial skills of knowing how to engage and how to get the most out of it. It's about learning how research and group work works in Australia. So what we've found, and many of the universities in Australia are finding, when they look closely, is that students who come in through an English language college in Australia, and generally they'll do around a minimum of 10 weeks of study, they do much better once they get into their degree. So there's so much more to English than just knowing the words, knowing the grammar, and being able to pass a test. Those tests are getting better and better all the time, and they are very, very good. But there's a lot to be said for sort of, what do we call it, acclimatizing and getting used to the environment.
And I think, and I just that just came to me as you were
Mhm.
presenting. But I think if you're going to be spending 50 or $100,000 on a degree program,
Yeah,
the investment of a few thousand extra dollars right at the start to help get you oriented, to get your usage up to that level, to get familiar with the classroom and environment in Australia, to me is a fantastic investment of money just
yeah,
to build that confidence
yeah,
before you hit that master's class where you might be sitting in with a whole bunch of native speakers. And that can be overwhelming and frightening. But if you've done that study
absolutely.
in advance, you're going to have more confidence going into that rigorous academic environment of a master's or a bachelor's degree.
Absolutely. And let's face it, going from high school, if you're going from high school into university, is a huge hurdle in itself. And I've had plenty of conversations suggesting that even native speakers, even Aussies, would do well to do a short course in an English language teaching institution to get those study skills and those essay skills up to scratch, because there's a big difference between, if they were doing that in a university setting. There's a big difference between that and jumping into a degree program, and a high school education.
Completely agree. I think high school students might resist that, but it's a good
Oh, they
suggestion.
sure would, but they'd be pleased that they did afterwards.
It's that's the truth, isn't it? Well, I mentioned sort of testing, and of course, some students may arrive in Australia with a mark which is lower than what they need for entry into their degree program. In terms of testing, that isn't handled by Australia, isn't it? That'll be handled by another agency. But how do those
So
sort of things work?
there's a couple of ways you can enter a program. There's the test system, So depending on where you're studying and where you're from, you might be required by immigration to have an English language test. That might be, your IELTS, your Pearson, your TOEFL. There's so many now. The CELPIP and the
LPIP, yeah.
language cert.
Yeah,
Um,
language cert.
and
Mhm.
and and sorry.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just, yeah, just emphasizing those new ones too.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the Michigan test of English as well now. So there's a whole range of different tests you can do. Um, Now, sometimes you must do one of those, and sometimes it's just a good idea. Other times you can do what's called a direct entry course. So a lot of the universities and some of the private providers will have what they call a direct entry course, and so this is an academic English course where you'll do a set period. Generally, it's 10 weeks or it might be 20 weeks, depending on your level. Um, and you'll do a pretty rigorous assessment. You'll have to write, a researched essay, and you'll have to do a presentation and so on. And there can be an English exam at the end as well. And when you finish that, that can give you what's called direct entry. So those courses have been designed so that they have the same level as the testing systems. Um, and so if you complete the course and you've got a certain grade, that'll be equivalent to an IELTS 6 or an IELTS 6.5 or an IELTS 7 or the equivalent in the other tests. And so you can go straight into the program without having to do one of those official tests.
Got it. My last question for you. Uh, Australia is, of course, a very multicultural country.
Mm,
We've got a vast cultural diaspora, and a lot of
mm,
students coming to Australia from somewhere else to study English, for example, can quite easily find um, their own community, so to speak.
yeah,
And in Manly, you have the Brazilian community. In different
yeah.
places, you've got the French community. So it is easy to find those communities, which I guess is reassuring in some ways. But there's also some risk there that maybe you end up speaking more of your home language than English. Do you have a view on how to balance that interaction with people from your own background as opposed to just be purely immersed here in
Yeah,
Australian English?
I do, and I'd say it's my view is probably um, is increasingly common now, but in the past it's been a bit controversial. Um, and I'd say two things. One is be ready for the multiculturalism of Australia. Because I know that some, particularly English language students, arrive and they think everyone's going to look like you, Rob, or me, and we just don't.
True.
We come in every color, shape, and size. We have one of the most multicultural populations in the world, and your teachers of English can have backgrounds from anywhere in the world. Um, don't judge them on that. Judge them on how great a teacher they are. Um, it's just a feature of the world, and it's a fantastic feature of the world. Um, the In terms of how much you practice, my view is that's going to be down to the individual. I think that the multiculturalism of Australia and the having other students from your home country can definitely slow down your English if you overuse your first language. But I'd also say that each student has got to be the best judge of that and be honest with themselves, because sometimes you really do need to just take a moment and relax and be able to speak your first language. Sometimes being able to speak your first language is a security blanket. Sometimes it's a safety thing where you're just not sure about a situation and you want to be able to speak your first language. And in Australia, you're in an environment where you often can. Um, and I'd say that in a lot of the really great English language colleges, they staff the college with an A to Z of languages. I've worked in many English language colleges in Australia, And I've never worked in a college where there were less than 5 or 6 languages spoken by the staff. That's invaluable particularly when you've got a lower level student, but also when you've got a student who is having a real difficulty, who's quite distressed and needs that support, or the parent wants to be able to talk to them, or they need help with something that requires going back to the first language. So I'm certainly not a believer in you must speak English 100% of the time. The more you speak English, the faster you'll learn generally. But that's going to be down to an individual person, their stamina, and their day-to-day circumstance.
We're just about out of time, so for those people who have put a question in the chat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go across to the Choosing Your Uni Discord, which is the official Discord server for the National Virtual Expo, and every question that's come through, as well as there are some others that were submitted in advance, all of those will be up in the Discord. So if you have a question about coming to study English in Australia, you're welcome to jump into the Discord. The details are in the session notes below, and every question will get an answer. And also, of course, we're doing sessions on every Australian university, vocational education and everything else. So if you're also not just thinking about doing English, but coming here to do other degree programs, you can literally find out about every university here in Australia. Ian Aird, CEO of English Australia, thank you so much for joining me at the National Virtual Expo.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
I got my first grade at uni and I just laughed out loud. It wasn't just a pass, I actually got a high distinction, and I'd always done terrible at school. I did the PSP course at SEU, which gave me like the foundations of what you need to be able to study at uni, and I didn't fail that, got good grades, so I was like, hey, we'll keep going. Studied a bachelor in psych, did all right, so I kept going and got into honours. And now I'm writing a thesis. Getting that first grade was the first time that I felt like I can actually do this, and it has led me to get to where I am now, and I'm really grateful of it.
Well, I hope you got something out of this session, and if you have any questions at all, you can head to choosingyouruni.com and ask Lumen. Lumen is your AI guide who knows about every university, every pathway, every option that we've talked about throughout this virtual expo, and Lumen is available to talk to you 24/7, so it's ready when you are.